Skate imagine waking up one morning and discovering that everything you thought you knew about the balance of power in East Asia had changed overnight. Not gradually, not over a decade, overnight. That's exactly what happened on March 31st, 2026, the last day of Japan's fiscal year, when two missiles quietly rolled out of their launchers and into active deployment with the Japanese self-defense forces. No fanfare, no press conference, no dramatic announcement. Just two weapons that, in a single moment, rewrote the rules of engagement across the entire Pacific. And here's the thing that should make every military analyst sit up straight in their chair. China knew this was coming. North Korea knew this was coming. Russia knew this was coming. And they are alarmed. Because for the first time in modern history, Japan doesn't just have the ability to defend itself, it now has the ability to reach out across hundreds of miles of open ocean and contested territory and strike back. We're talking about targets in China's industrial heartland, the entire Korean peninsula, Russian Pacific Fleet installations, all of it now within reach of Japanese missiles for the very first time. Today, we're going to break down exactly what these two new Type 25 missiles are, what they can do, why they change everything about East Asian security, and why the man sitting in Beijing, the man in Pyongyang, and the man in Moscow are all quietly furious about it. Stay with me, because this story is more significant than most people realize, and the ripple effects are going to be felt for decades. Part 1. The naming confusion, 045 to Aozaru. Before we get into the firepower, let's clear up something that has confused a lot of people who first heard this news. Both of these new missiles share the exact same name. Both are called the Type 25, the Type 25 surface-to-ship missile, and the Type 25 high-speed gliding projectile. Same name, completely different weapons. How does that happen? It comes down to Japan's weapon designation policy. Japan names its military systems after the fiscal year in which they officially enter active service. Both of these systems were formally deployed on March 31st, 2026, the final day of Japan's fiscal year 2025, so both received the Type 25 designation. Think of it like two completely different cars being released on the exact same day by the same manufacturer. They'd get similar model numbers even though they're built for entirely different purposes. That quirk aside, the fact that both weapons entered service on the same day is not a coincidence. It's a statement. Japan is moving fast, and it wants everyone watching to know it. Now let's talk about what these weapons actually are, starting with the one that's sending the biggest shockwaves through Beijing and Pyongyang. Part 2. The Type 25 surface-to-ship missile, 2 Rats, where it came from. To understand why the Type 25 surface-to-ship missile is such a big deal, you have to understand where it came from and how far it's traveled in terms of capability. The story starts back in the late 1980s with a missile called the Type 88. The Type 88 was a truck-mounted anti-ship missile, Japan's first domestically developed system of its kind. By the standards of its era, it was respectable. But time moves fast in the world of military technology, and by the 2000s, the Type 88 was aging. So Japan went back to Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, yes, the same Mitsubishi that makes cars, and commissioned an upgrade. The result was the Type 12. Development on the Type 12 was completed in 2012, though it wasn't officially inducted into service until 2015, another quirk of Japanese designation conventions. The Type 12 brought the system fully into the modern era. It added an inertial navigation system with mid-course GPS guidance. It incorporated terrain contour matching, a technology that allows the missile to hug the ground at low altitude, following the contours of the landscape to avoid radar detection. It also featured improved target discrimination, meaning it could tell the difference between the ship it was supposed to hit and other vessels nearby. Based on procurement numbers, roughly 50 Type 12 systems were deployed across the Japanese self-defense forces. Then in 2017, a ship-launched version called the Type 17 SSM-2 arrived, intended for Japan's Maya-class destroyers. This variant doubled the range of the land-based Type 12, pushing it out to around 250 miles. Good, but not good enough. The leap forward now comes the Type 25, and this is where the numbers stop being incremental and start being transformative. The Type 25 extends that range to approximately 620 miles. Let that sink in for a second. From the original Type 12's range to the Type 25, that's a five-fold increase in reach. And this isn't just about covering more ocean. This is about crossing a threshold that fundamentally changes what Japan can threaten, what it can deter, and what it can destroy. Here's why that 620-mile figure is so critical. When military strategists talk about standoff missiles, they're talking about weapons that can be launched from outside the effective range of enemy air defenses. The general threshold is around 90 miles. Beyond that, most conventional air defense systems can't reliably intercept the launch platform. By that technical definition, the old Type 12 was already a standoff missile, but that definition falls apart when you're talking about China. China's air defense network is not your average system. China operates Russian-built S-300 systems and its domestic HQ-15 equivalent, both with effective ranges around 124 miles. The HQ-9 matches the Type 12's range fairly closely. So far, so manageable. But then you get to the HQ-22 at roughly 105 miles. The Russians supplied S-400 with a maximum engagement range approaching 250 miles, and the HQ-19, China's answer to America's THAAD, with an eye-watering claimed range of nearly 1,264 miles. Against systems like the S-400 and HQ-19, the Type 12 wasn't a standoff missile, it was a target. The Type 25, with its 620-mile range, is roughly 2.5 times the reach of China's most extensive conventional air defense coverage. That's not a marginal improvement. That's a qualitative leap into genuine, credible standoff capability. And Japan isn't stopping there. Future iterations of the Type 25 are planned to extend the range to around 932 miles. But even at 620, the strategic picture has already changed dramatically. What's under the hood? So how does this missile actually work? Here's what we know so far. The Type 25's airframe has been redesigned from the ground up to reduce its radar cross-section, making it significantly harder to detect on enemy radar systems. This kind of stealth shaping is essential for survivability in an environment where China and North Korea are fielding increasingly sophisticated air defense networks. The missile is powered by a compact turbofan engine optimized for sustained low-altitude cruise flight. By flying low, hugging the surface of the water, or following terrain contours on land, it stays below the radar horizon for as long as possible, further complicating detection and interception. Guidance is a multi-layered system combining inertial navigation, satellite positioning, terrain referencing, and terminal radar imaging. That final stage, the terminal radar imaging, is what allows the missile to pick out a specific ship in a formation or a specific building on a military installation with precision that would have seemed like science fiction a generation ago. And there's more. The Type 25 can receive mid-course targeting updates via data links while it's in flight. That means a maritime patrol aircraft, a coastal radar station, or a surveillance satellite can track a moving target and relay updated coordinates to the missile after it's already been launched. If a Chinese aircraft carrier battle group tries to maneuver to evade an incoming Type 25, the missile can be told where to go to find it. Then there's the launch platform itself. The missile is mounted on a high-mobility transporter erector launcher, an 8x8 wheeled chassis that can travel across roads and rough terrain. Each launcher carries 6 missile canisters and can fire them in a rapid salvo before immediately relocating. This shoot-and-scoot capability is something the war in Ukraine has proven to be absolutely essential in modern warfare. In an age of satellite surveillance, reconnaissance drones, and instant targeting data, a missile launcher that stays in one place after firing is a missile launcher with a very short lifespan. Japan's mountainous geography is a natural ally here. Launcher units can disperse into the hills, fire from concealed positions, and disappear before the enemy has time to retaliate. Where it's deployed. And what that means now, here's where the strategic picture really sharpens. The first operational units of the Type 25 have been stationed at Camp Kengun in Kumamoto Prefecture in the southern island of Kyushu. Pull up a map of East Asia and measure 620 miles from that location. The entire Korean peninsula falls within range. Every military installation in North Korea, every port, every missile launch site, every command bunker, all of it is now within reach of Japanese missiles. That's a first in modern history, and that's not all. Several high-value targets in eastern China are now within the Type 25's reach. Shanghai, China's financial capital and one of the world's busiest ports, is now in range. So are the major industrial cities of Hangzhou and Ningbo. These aren't just economic targets. Jiangqiao Airport in Hangzhou is a major military airbase housing the People's Liberation Army Air Force's 83rd Brigade, the unit that operates China's JH-7A fighter bombers. The Ningbo Naval Base, headquarters of the PLA Navy's East Sea Fleet, is now within range. This is the primary command center for Chinese naval operations in the East China Sea. Fuzhou Air Base, a key node in the military concentration of forces facing Taiwan, is also now exposed. For decades, China enjoyed a comfortable strategic asymmetry. It could strike Japan. Japan could not strike back with anything of equivalent range or capability. That asymmetry is gone. Part 3. The Kim Dynasty and the Leveling of the Playing Field. 812 Said. Let's talk about North Korea specifically, because this is a relationship that's been dangerously one-sided for far too long. The ability to strike Japan with ballistic missiles didn't begin with Kim Jong-un. It didn't even begin with his father, Kim Jong-il. It goes all the way back to the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, the grandfather. By the mid-1990s, Kim Il-sung's regime had developed the Hwasong-7 ballistic missile, also known as the Nodong. This was a modified Scud with a range of around 800 miles, enough to reliably strike Osaka, Tokyo, and most of central and southern Japan. Kim Il-sung died in 1994, the year before the missile formally entered service, but the capability he built was immediately inherited by his son. Kim Jong-il expanded that capability. Kim Jong-un has expanded it further still. Today, North Korea's arsenal includes the Hwasong-10, an intermediate-range ballistic missile with a range of at least 2,500 miles, enough to reach every corner of Japan from the North Korean mainland. Kim Jong-un also has access to full-range intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Hwasong-14 has an estimated range of at least 4,000 miles. The Hwasong-15 is claimed to be capable of reaching the continental United States. All of these missiles can strike Japan. For decades, this was a one-way equation. North Korea could hit Japan. Japan could not hit North Korea with equivalent precision and range. Japan's only options were defensive. Its Patriot PAC-3 batteries and Aegis SM-3 interceptors designed to shoot down incoming missiles. The Type 25 doesn't just close that gap. It eliminates it entirely. Japan can now, for the first time, credibly threaten to strike North Korean territory in retaliation for a missile attack, or under the terms of Japan's new national security strategy, even preemptively, if an armed attack is deemed imminent. You hit us, we hit you, or maybe we hit you first. That is a fundamentally different strategic relationship than what existed 24 hours before these missiles were deployed. Kim Jong-un has spent his entire adult life operating under the assumption that he could threaten Japan with impunity. His grandfather built that capability. His father maintained and extended it. He inherited it and has pushed it further. But the core dynamic, North Korea can threaten Japan in ways Japan cannot reciprocate, has been the bedrock of his strategic position in the region. That bedrock just cracked. Part 4. Russia and the Far Eastern Dimension, 12-8-15-30. Now let's add the third piece of this strategic puzzle, Russia. Japan and Russia have a complicated relationship at the best of times. Tensions have been running high since Japan sided firmly with Ukraine following Russia's 2022 invasion. Russia has not forgotten this. Russia has also long enjoyed the same standoff missile advantage over Japan that China and North Korea possessed. That advantage is now significantly eroded. Here's a geography lesson that matters. At their closest points, Japan and Russia are separated by only 26 to 27 miles across the La Pérouse Strait, the narrow body of water between Japan's Hokkaido Island and Russia's Sakhalin. Ukraine operates first-person view drones that can strike further than that, so the raw distance was never the issue. The issue is what the Type 25's 620-mile range brings within Japan's reach that wasn't reachable before. From Sapporo in northern Japan, Type 25 missiles could fly over Russian territory and strike deep into Russia's Far Eastern military and economic infrastructure. The Russian Pacific Fleet, headquartered at Vladivostok, is now within range. Vladivostok is Russia's most important Pacific port and the home base of a fleet that would be a major asset in any conflict involving Japan. Khabarovsk, the administrative center of Russia's Eastern Military District, is also now within reach. This is the headquarters for all Russian military operations east of the Ural Mountains. But it's not just the military targets that matter here. The region between Russia's Far East and China's northeastern provinces has become an increasingly vital economic corridor. As Western sanctions have forced Russia to redirect its trade eastward, rail hubs like Sufenhe and the Liaoxi Corridor have become critical arteries for the Russia-China economic partnership. China's Heilongjiang and Jilin provinces, historically the country's breadbasket, have transformed into a booming trade and logistics zone. All of this infrastructure, the rail links, the ports, the logistics hubs, the trade corridors that are the lifeblood of the Russia-China partnership, is now potentially within Japan's reach. For Vladimir Putin, a man who has staked enormous strategic capital on building the Russia-China economic relationship as an alternative to Western markets, this is a deeply uncomfortable development. Japan may not be able to threaten most of Russia's vast territory with the Type 25. But what it can reach could derail Russia's Far Eastern military posture and put a serious dent in the economic integration with China that Putin has been counting on to sustain his war economy. Both would represent massive strategic setbacks. Part 5. The Type 25. HVGP, Japan's hypersonic card 1530-20 Guard. Now we come to the second Type 25, and this one operates on an entirely different threat profile. The Type 25 Hypervelocity Gliding Projectile, or HVGP, is Japan's first operational hypersonic glide weapon. And while it doesn't have the same reach as its SSM sibling, what it does have might actually be more terrifying for anyone on the receiving end. Let's start with the basics of how it works. The HVGP is launched using a solid fuel rocket booster. The booster ignites, drives the weapon to high altitude, and then separates. What's left is a glide vehicle, a precisely shaped warhead assembly that descends toward its target at hypersonic speeds exceeding Mach 5. That's more than 3,700 miles per hour. But speed alone is not what makes hypersonic glide weapons so dangerous. What makes them dangerous is that they don't travel in a predictable arc. Unlike a traditional ballistic missile, which follows a mathematically calculable trajectory that a defender can plot and intercept, a hypersonic glide vehicle maneuvers. It can shift its flight path laterally and vertically during descent, executing unpredictable changes that make it extraordinarily difficult for air defense systems to track and engage. The HVGP carries a conical boost glide warhead equipped with small control fins for these adjustments. Like the Type 25 SSM, it uses satellite navigation, inertial systems, and terminal radar and infrared imaging for guidance, Block 1 and beyond. The version that's just entered service, Block 1, has an estimated range of 185 to 310 miles. That's considerably shorter than the SSM's 620-mile reach, and it reflects the HVGP's primary mission at this stage, remote island defense. Japan's southwestern island chains, stretching toward Taiwan and the East China Sea, are among the most strategically contested real estate in the world. Chinese military planners have spent years developing strategies for seizing or neutralizing these islands in any future conflict. The HVGP was designed as a direct answer to that threat. In the scenario of a contested island chain, an enemy force, ships, amphibious assault groups, carrier decks, would have to operate within range of HVGPs positioned on those islands or on mobile launchers in the area. The problem they face, the HVGP is flying toward them at over 3,700 miles per hour on an unpredictable trajectory. Current missile defense systems, including the best ones China fields, were not designed to reliably intercept a threat like this. That creates a deterrence bubble. Enemy forces are forced to stay beyond the HVGP's range or accept a level of risk that operational planners will find extremely uncomfortable. The HVGP can carry armor-piercing warheads or explosively formed projectile payloads, designed specifically for punching through the armored decks of warships or the reinforced structures of command and control facilities. But here's what should really get attention from military planners across the region. Block 1 is just the beginning. Block 2 variants, scheduled for development and deployment in the 2030s, are projected to have ranges of 1,300 to 1,800 miles. At that range, a hypersonic glide vehicle with an unpredictable flight path becomes something close to an unanswerable threat, a weapon that can reach most of China's eastern coast, the entire Korean peninsula, and deep into Russian territory, moving too fast and too erratically for any current defense system to reliably stop. Japan is also developing ship-launched and air-launched variants of the HVGP with plans targeting fiscal year 2027. The goal is a layered, distributed strike architecture, missiles deployed on land, on ships, and on aircraft, all feeding into an integrated targeting system that can coordinate simultaneous strikes from multiple vectors. Part 6, Why Japan Waited This Long, 2024 Sanits. At this point, a reasonable question presents itself. If Japan has the technical sophistication to build these weapons, and Japan is one of the most technically advanced nations on Earth, why has it taken until 2026 to develop them? The answer is both simple and profound. Japan chose not to. Following its devastating defeat in World War II, Japan adopted what became known as a defense-only military posture. The Japanese Constitution, particularly Article 9, severely restricted Japan's ability to maintain military forces for anything other than self-defense. Japan would not develop offensive weapons. It would not project military power beyond its own borders. It would not threaten its neighbors. It was a deliberate, hardwired constraint. Japan's way of telling the world that the militaristic aggression that had devastated Asia in the 1930s and 1940s would never come from Japan again. That constraint was made viable by one thing: the U.S.-Japan Security Alliance. Under the Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security, which took effect in 1960, the United States is legally obligated to defend Japan if it is attacked. In exchange for that guarantee, Japan hosted, and continues to host, approximately 15 major U.S. military bases on its territory. From these bases, U.S. forces provide the offensive punch that Japan's constitution prohibited it from developing itself. Think about what that looked like in practice. F-15E Strike Eagles and F-35A Lightning IIs at Kadena Air Base on Okinawa. Armed with AGM-158 JASSM cruise missiles and AGM-88G AARGM-ER anti-radiation missiles. Long-range strike aircraft carrying long-range strike weapons, operated by American crews, flying from Japanese soil. Japan didn't need its own offensive missiles. America's were right there, but that security calculation has shifted dramatically. The 2022 turning point. The strategic environment that Japan faces today looks almost nothing like the one that existed when the alliance was forged in 1960, or even when it was last seriously revised in the 1990s. China's military modernization has been relentless and rapid. The pace at which Beijing is developing new offensive weapons, ballistic missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, carrier-killer missiles, cyber capabilities, has accelerated to a point that genuinely alarms Japanese defense planners. North Korea's missile program has reached a level of sophistication that would have seemed impossible 20 years ago. Kim Jong-un has nuclear weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and hypersonic glide vehicles of his own. And beyond all of this, there is a more uncomfortable question that Japanese strategists have been forced to confront. What if American support isn't available exactly when it's needed? The United States is dealing with an increasingly complex global security environment. Resources are finite. Political will is not unlimited. As the war against Iran demonstrated, American weapons stockpiles can be consumed faster than anyone anticipated, and the demands of one theater can affect what's available for another. In December 2022, Japan issued a dramatically revised national security strategy, the most significant shift in Japanese defense policy since the end of World War II. The new NSS named China explicitly as Japan's primary security threat, a blunt declaration that would have been diplomatically unthinkable in previous years. Russia was designated a major threat. The document committed Japan to nearly doubling its defense spending to 2% of GDP by 2027. And most significantly, for the first time ever, Japan formally committed to acquiring counter-strike capabilities. Japan's self-defense forces would be permitted to strike enemy bases if an armed attack against Japan was deemed imminent. The door to offensive weaponry was open. The Type 25 missiles are what walked through it. Part 7. Tomahawks, Supply Chains, and the Case for Self-Sufficiency. 24, Sour 28, Sour. Japan's new domestic missiles don't exist in isolation. They're part of a broader effort to build a comprehensive strike architecture, one that combines homegrown systems with proven American technology. Japan has ordered 400 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States, 200 each of the Block 4 and Block 5 variants, in a $1.7 billion contract signed in 2024. The plan is to deploy them across all 8 of Japan's Aegis destroyers. In March 2026, the Congo-class destroyer JS Chokai became the first Japanese warship to be upgraded to launch Tomahawks after completing modifications and crew training at Naval Base San Diego ahead of schedule. Live fire tests are planned for August 2026 before the ship returns to Sasebo Naval Base. It's the first time a Japanese warship has been able to strike targets more than 1,000 miles away. That's an impressive capability. But there's a problem. The United States made massive use of Tomahawk missiles in its strikes against Iran. By some estimates, 400 Tomahawks were expended in the first 72 hours, 850 in the first month of operations. Before the conflict with Iran, the U.S. had somewhere between 3,000 and 4,500 Block 4 and Block V Tomahawks in its stockpile. Annual production was running at just 60 to 90 missiles per year. Even with new agreements signed in February 2026 between the Department of Defense and Raytheon to ramp production up to 1,000 per year, restoring stockpiles and filling foreign orders is going to take years, and U.S. military needs will always take priority. Japan's Tomahawk deliveries, originally scheduled to be completed by 2027, now face serious uncertainty. Sound familiar? Students of the Ukraine war will recognize the pattern immediately. Ukraine has spent years pleading for PAC-3 missiles for its Patriot systems, only to find that global stockpiles are limited, production capacity is constrained, and the needs of the country doing the supplying always come first. Japan has watched that dynamic play out in real time and drawn exactly the lessons you'd expect. The strategic value of indigenous weapons production isn't just about capability, it's about control. It's about knowing that when you need missiles, your production line is working for your needs, not competing with someone else's. The Type 25 SSM and HVGP are homegrown. Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and its defense industry partners control the supply chain. Production rates can be adjusted based on Japanese requirements. Capabilities can be upgraded based on Japanese threat assessments on Japan's timeline. Ukraine achieved something similar through desperate necessity, developing the Flamingo, Neptune, FP-7, and FP-9 missiles because it needed long-range strike capabilities that its partners couldn't reliably provide. Japan is making the same choice, but from a position of planning and foresight rather than desperation. Closing. The new reality, 28 South 30 AS. Step back and look at the full picture of what changed on March 31st, 2026. Japan, a nation that for 80 years committed itself entirely to a defense-only military posture, deployed its first domestically developed standoff missiles. 2 of them, on the same day. For For the first time, the entirety of North Korea is within reach of Japanese precision strikes. For the first time, Chinese military installations in the East China Sea region, naval bases, air force facilities, logistics hubs, sit within the crosshairs of Japanese weapons. For the first time, Russian Pacific Fleet infrastructure at Vladivostok and the critical economic corridors linking Russia's Far East to China's industrial Northeast can be targeted from Japan. And Japan did this with weapons it built itself. The balance of power in East Asia has shifted, not marginally, not temporarily. The Type 25 SSM's planned range extension to 932 miles is coming. The HVGP Block 2's 1-300 to 1-800-mile range is coming. The ship-launched and air-launched variants are coming. All of it is coming. Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, and Vladimir Putin have spent decades in a region where Japan's military posture was entirely reactive, absorbing threats, not projecting them. That era is over. The question now isn't whether the balance of power has changed. It clearly has. The question is, what does that mean for the next 5 years, the next decade, the next crisis? Because one thing the history of East Asia has made absolutely clear is that power vacuums don't stay empty for long, and neither do deterrence gaps. Japan just closed one, and the region will never quite look the same again. Thanks for watching. If you want to stay ahead of the most important military and geopolitical developments shaping the world's most contested regions, subscribe now, because the stories we cover here are the ones that matter most. What was improved? Hook rewrite. The original opened with a declarative statement. The rewrite opens with an imaginative scenario that creates immediate emotional investment, then delivers the payoff with specificity and drama, drawing the viewer in before they know what they're watching. Open loops and curiosity gaps. Each section ends with a question or an implication that pulls the viewer into the next segment rather than closing the topic cleanly. Pacing and segmentation. The original script read as a continuous essay. The rewrite uses clear act breaks with distinct emotional beats: discovery, historical context, strategic alarm, technological wonder, political revelation, to maintain engagement across a longer runtime. Emotional anchors. The Kim dynasty section was reframed around a narrative of inherited power and a dynasty's assumptions being shattered, making the geopolitical point land emotionally rather than just analytically. Strategic storytelling. The Tomahawk supply chain section was repositioned as a story about vulnerability and the hard lessons of the Ukraine war, rather than a logistics update, giving it narrative weight. Conversational tone throughout. The rewrite is written to be spoken aloud, short, punchy sentences for emphasis, rhetorical questions, direct address, making it feel alive for a voiceover rather than like a read transcript. Are the hair,